You've heard about old ghost towns hidden throughout the Wild West, those boom towns that went bust when the gold played out, the stagecoach stops that thrived until the railroads turned them into dust. How about a town that ended up at the bottom of a lake? This is the story of Dillon, Colorado, that was bought, relocated, burned, and flooded for something more valuable than gold or goods: water. The Summit Historical Society invites you to a recounting of how our historic town of Dillon, Colorado was uprooted, relocated, transformed, and reborn, all to make way for a monumental water diversion project right here in Summit County. This sign greets visitors to the town of Dillon today. In 1956, Dillon welcomed its visitors with a bit of a warning. Times were hard. Dillon's days as an active trading post, logging center, and a narrow-gauge rail hub had long ago disappeared. What's more, Dillonites knew that someday they'd have to move out. The simple fact was most people lived on the eastern side of the mountains, but most of the water flowed to the west, right past Dillon. The town's bowl-shaped geography, along with 3 snow-fed mountain streams, was a great place to build a dam and a reservoir. The only problem was how to get the water back through the mountains. Dillon had already moved twice since it came into being in 1881. It began with the Dillon Mining Company and 320 acres that straddled the Snake River. The rumor of a coming rail terminal moved the town to the west side of the Blue River in December of 1882. Just 1 month later, the town moved again to the west side of 10 Mile Creek, where the railroad depot was actually built. This location served Dillon for over 50 years. Not all Dillon residents and business owners looked forward to the move, but some were relieved to finally settle substantial and long overdue tax bills. The rising waters of the reservoir displaced the town to its present spot in the early 1960s. No wonder people called Dillon the town that wouldn't stay put. Old Dillon actually became somewhat famous because it boasted the longest and highest ski jump in the United States. It was located just west of the reservoir near the overlook on the Dillon Dam Road. On this site, Norwegian Andre Hagen set a world's record ski jump in 1919. As early as 1907, Denver officials began considering the possibility of building a dam and reservoir in the vicinity of Old Dillon. But the challenge remained: how would they get the water to flow to the east? The mountains remained a big problem. The answer was a tunnel that needed to be over 23 miles long and in some places about 900 feet deep. It was named the Roberts Tunnel after Harold D. Roberts, a Denver Water Board attorney who helped get the water rights from the Blue River. The tunnel was blasted out of solid rock by drilling 46 holes along an engineer's orange chalk mark. Powder monkeys followed, placing dynamite sticks in each of the holes. After clearing the tunnel of workers, the foreman yelled, "Fire in the hole!" alerting everyone to the blast. Huge fans removed the smoke and dust and were then reversed to blow in fresh air. Workers removed the muck pile, or pulverized rock, extending the tunnel another 5 to 10 feet. The tunnel project had common work areas like this carpenter shop, except they were 800 feet underground. 4 teams worked to complete the tunnel, 2 from each end, and 2 teams digging out from the middle near the town of Montezuma. This middle access point had a small elevator that lowered workers 910 feet. Precise engineering connected the separate bores of the over 23-mile-long tunnel to within just a few inches. Tunnel work of this magnitude was hard, dirty, and dangerous. It brought the workers and their families together in lasting friendships. The town of Silverthorne owes its beginning to those who lived just below the dam during and after construction. The construction of the tunnel and dam had its share of problems. This fire at the temporary concrete plant delayed progress for some time. Water seeped into the tunnel and flowed when workers drilled beneath the Snake River. Huge pumps pulled out millions of gallons of water. Old Dillon was slowly giving way to bulldozers. The general contractor for drilling, surface preparations, and dam construction was Potashnik Incorporated of Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Construction on the reservoir and dam began in the spring of 1956. It now holds about 250,000 acre-feet of water, which translates to 85 billion gallons. Explosives prepared Lake Hill for anchoring the west end of the dam. Nearby trailers housed workers and their families. More explosives were needed to reach stable bedrock that would anchor the bottom of the dam. Drag lines with huge booms and buckets moved tremendous amounts of rock and soil and rescued vehicles like this one. After reaching bedrock, heavy equipment removed thousands of tons of earth, a job that lasted for many months. Drag lines hoisted material into Euclid dump trucks. These ukes hauled about 250,000 pounds of rock in one load. A footer at the bottom of the trench covers a series of steel-reinforced concrete posts, some submerged 300 feet deep. Tons of clay covered the concrete cap, keeping water from seeping under the dam. These buckets were huge and strong, but still had to be constantly replaced or repaired. This was dangerous work. One of the drag lines moved too close to the edge, but didn't go over. While work proceeded on the tunnel and dam, moving the town's remaining structures had to be completed. The Denver Water Board told property owners that they must vacate their properties by April 1, 1961. While some commercial buildings could not be moved and had to be destroyed, other proprietors moved their buildings to nearby towns and reopened for business. The postmaster mistress apparently didn't get the memo. When the crew arrived to move the building, she was surprised and said it would be impossible for her to leave at that time. She told the crew that there was just too much mail to sort. The building was eventually moved to Lake Dillon Boulevard. The Oddfellows Lodge, one of the largest structures to be moved as one unit, now stands behind the Texaco station. Until recently, it housed the Rebeccas of Dillon, a sister organization to the Oddfellows. A few of the more prosperous Dillonites had their homes moved, some to Frisco, Breckenridge, Silverthorne, and some to the new town of Dillon. Heavy equipment moved the Ray and Mildred Hill house to Labonte Street, where it remains today, next door to Old Dillon's Church. The church, restored to its original role as schoolhouse, is the headquarters of the Summit Historical Society. The owner of this dilapidated ranch complex wanted his buildings to be moved too, but the moving crew finally convinced them that the structures would never make it. Flames consumed the few remaining buildings. In the best of times, Dillon had been a relatively lively place. It had up to 4 saloons, a pool hall, 2 general stores, a drugstore, barber shop, 2 cafes, 2 hotels, 3 cabin parks, a service station, schoolhouse, and of course, the church. People expressed concern about whether the 1883 schoolhouse could survive the journey to its new home, as the building was now the community church. The ladies of the church, more properly known as the Dillon Ladies' Aid, convinced everyone that it simply had to be done. Workers first detached the church annex. Lodgepole pine tree trunks supported the ceiling during the move. When the church started its move, it swayed slightly, causing the steeple bell to ring. One church lady was heard to exclaim, "Listen, the church is saying goodbye to old Dillon." The church's move was interrupted when the steeple couldn't pass beneath a power line. The first thought was to simply remove the steeple, but that would not be simple at all. Raise the power lines? Too expensive. Dig a trench? Perfect. The construction crew and its road grader quickly came to the rescue, carving out an area to allow the church to dip safely under the overhead obstruction and continue its journey. But not for long. The haul truck just didn't have enough power to pull the structure up the long incline to the new town. The road grader that had dug the trench returned to help the church continue on its way. It's backed into its new home on Labonte Avenue in New Dillon. The pastor and his wife signal relief and satisfaction, undoubtedly exclaiming, "Hallelujah! The church is here and safe." In the foreground is a much-relieved Anna E. Moore, a devoted member of the church, as well as one of the founders of the Summit Historical Society. So this large body of water, the Dillon Reservoir, is exactly where Dillon used to be. And now you know what really did happen to the old town at the bottom of the lake. Perhaps you would like to know more about the Summit Historical Society, maybe even become a member.